The fear of a new weapon. What if a single weapon could end a war or destroy the world? In 1939, a small group of physicists made a discovery that would change the course of history. They realized that a single atomic reaction could release an amount of energy unlike anything ever seen before. If controlled, it could power entire cities. But if weaponized, it could destroy them. At the same time, Europe was moving toward war. Nazi Germany had already begun expanding across the continent, and many scientists feared that German physicists might be working on the same idea. Among them was Albert Einstein, who warned that this new form of energy could lead to the most powerful weapon ever created. His concerns reached the highest levels of the United States government. In response, a secret program was initiated, one that would operate beyond public knowledge, beyond traditional military structures, and at a scale never attempted before. What followed was not just a scientific project. It was the beginning of a race against time. The race begins. In August 1939, a letter was delivered to President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Signed by Albert Einstein and written with the help of physicist Leo Szilard, the message warned of a new and potentially devastating possibility. Recent scientific discoveries suggested that uranium could be used to create a powerful explosive device. More importantly, the letter made a critical assumption. Germany might already be working on such a weapon. At the time, many of the world's leading physicists were either in Europe or had recently fled from it. The idea that Nazi Germany could gain access to this knowledge and act on it was deeply concerning. Initially, the response from the US government was cautious, but as the war intensified and more information became available, the urgency increased. What had started as a scientific concern began to evolve into a national priority. By the early 1940s, the United States had committed to a coordinated effort to investigate and develop atomic technology. What began as a warning had now become a race, and the stakes could not have been higher. Building in secret. As the project expanded, secrecy became one of its defining characteristics. Unlike conventional military programs, this effort would operate almost entirely outside public awareness. Entire facilities were planned, constructed, and operated without revealing their true purpose, even to many of the people working there. Locations were carefully selected across the United States, often in remote or sparsely populated regions. Workers arrived at construction sites with little understanding of what they were helping to build. Many were told only that their work was important to the war effort. Communication was tightly controlled. Letters were monitored. Movement was restricted, and information was divided into isolated segments. Scientists, engineers, and workers were often unaware of how their individual tasks fit into the larger objective. The system of compartmentalization allowed the project to grow rapidly while maintaining strict secrecy. At its peak, the program employed tens of thousands of people, yet very few understood the full scope of what was being created. What emerged was something entirely new. Not just a laboratory or a military base, but a hidden network of sites, connected by a single purpose, yet largely invisible to the outside world. The secret cities. To support the growing demands of the project, the United States began constructing entire cities from scratch. These locations were designed to operate in complete secrecy, each serving a specific role within the broader program. In Tennessee, the site at Oak Ridge became a center for uranium enrichment. thousands of workers operated large-scale industrial facilities, processing raw materials through complex systems whose purpose was rarely explained. Many employees followed precise routines without fully understanding the significance of their work. Further west in Washington state, the Hanford site was established along the Columbia River. There, massive reactors were built to produce plutonium, a material that would become central to the project's later stages. The scale of construction was immense, requiring vast quantities of resources and energy. At the same time, a more isolated location in New Mexico served a different purpose. At Los Alamos, a team of leading scientists was assembled to design and develop the weapon itself. Unlike the industrial sites, this facility operated more like a research center, yet it remained just as secretive. Together, these locations formed a network of hidden cities. Each one operated independently, yet all were connected by a single objective, one that few could fully comprehend: scale and cost. As the Manhattan Project continued to expand, its scale became increasingly difficult to comprehend. What had begun as a theoretical concern had evolved into one of the largest scientific and industrial efforts ever undertaken. Tens of thousands of people were now involved, working across multiple locations under strict secrecy. The project required enormous financial resources. By the end of the war, the total cost would exceed $2 billion, an extraordinary sum at the time, equivalent to tens of billions in today's terms. Yet, despite its size, the project remained largely hidden from the public. Entire cities operated without clear explanations, and workers often had no knowledge of the final objective. Each site focused on its specific task, contributing to a system that only a small number of individuals fully understood. The scale of coordination was unprecedented. Scientists, engineers, military personnel, and industrial workers were brought together in a way that had never been attempted before. But even with these resources, one question remained unanswered. Would the project actually succeed? The unknown outcome. Despite the enormous scale of the Manhattan Project, success was far from guaranteed. The underlying science was still being explored, and many of the processes involved had never been tested under real conditions. Scientists were working at the very edge of human knowledge, attempting to control reactions that were not yet fully understood. There were no previous examples to rely on. Every step involved uncertainty. Even small miscalculations could lead to failure, or worse, unpredictable consequences. Some researchers questioned whether the reactions could be sustained in a controlled way, while others feared the potential destructive power if they succeeded. At Los Alamos, theoretical models were constantly revised as new data emerged. Designs were adjusted, assumptions were challenged, and timelines shifted as the project moved forward. Yet the pressure remained constant. The war was still ongoing and time was limited. The question was no longer whether the project should continue. It was whether it would work. The moment before. By early 1945, the Manhattan Project had reached a critical stage. Years of research, construction, and secrecy had led to a single objective. The materials had been produced, the designs had taken shape, and the theoretical calculations were approaching reality. For the first time, it seemed possible that the project might succeed. Yet no one could be certain. The device that had been designed had never been tested. Its power was still based on calculations, models, and assumptions. There was no guarantee that the reaction would unfold as expected. Everything now depended on a single experiment. Deep in the desert of New Mexico, Preparations began for what would become the first test of a nuclear device. The outcome would determine not only the success of the project, but the future of warfare itself. The world was about to enter a new era. The documentary continues in the Manhattan Project, Part 2. But by 1945, one question remained. Would it actually work?